Healthy narcissism. Is there such a thing? Why are we using that term so widely in our society? So, I'm going to tell you today why I really dislike this term, healthy narcissism. I think it makes no sense, and I'll share what I think people are trying to say. I'm thinking this term became really popular because we as a society are so confused about what is healthy self interest, what is healthy self confidence, healthy self esteem. How do we navigate that space, right? So, people worrying that anything where you are thinking about yourself is narcissistic, right? Where you are sort of self involved, that's narcissism made everybody, I think, really nervous. So, this term healthy narcissism is exploding. But we're going to talk about it. So, the first person who really began to talk about normal narcissism was Heinz Kohut, a psychoanalyst in the US, but he was born in Austria, but was in the US. And he developed something called self psychology. And he actually coined the term normal narcissism and normal narcissistic entitlement to refer to children, to a normal stage of development for children. And his research showed that if these normal narcissistic needs could be met for children, then they could grow up into adults with a mature, positive self esteem, self confidence, strong self regard, empathy for others and the recognition of their needs, authentic self concept, self respect, self love, the confidence to set and pursue goals, some emotional resilience, both a desire to receive admiration, but also a willingness to give admiration, right? A balance. The ability to accept criticism while also maintaining their own self regard, and a healthy level of pride in themselves and in their accomplishments. So, do I think this is a list of a healthy person? Absolutely. How does this relate to narcissism? Let's talk about the definition of narcissism, right? I'll quote from two different dictionaries, which are pretty well respected. All right. So, the definition of narcissistic, according to the Cambridge Dictionary, is having too much interest in and admiration for yourself. And the Merriam-Webster definition is extremely self-centered with an exaggerated sense of self-importance, marked by or characteristic of excessive admiration of or infatuation with oneself. I'm going to read you from two different articles I pulled up on this topic. Now, one of them, just going to read a quick paragraph here. People with healthy narcissism have a quiet, comfortable confidence. They are aware of their strengths as well as their shortcomings and view both as essential to their wholeness. They know they are not perfect and have no expectations or intentions to be so. Why is that not called authentic confidence? Or somebody with strong self-regard, strong self-confidence, right? That's not narcissistic. There's nothing in there that talks about an excessive love for oneself. Now remember, Narcissus, he was actually the son of a river god and a nymph, and he was known for his beauty, and he rejected a couple of lovers, which got some of the other gods angry. And this myth varies in terms of how angry those gods were, but basically Narcissus falls in love with his reflection in a pond, and he can't stop staring into his reflection, and eventually he falls in and drowns. And another little nice piece of the myth is that a flower grows in that spot, and that is the flower that we call Narcissus. But anyway, he was so self-involved, he drowned. So these definitions of healthy narcissism are totally unrelated to narcissism. The narcissism in this myth denotes an excessive degree of self-esteem, self-involvement that is usually seen as a form of immaturity, but in its pathological form, it's way beyond immaturity. Now, a tricky little thing here. Pathological narcissists actually are almost like an empty shell. They are grandiose, they have bravado, they seem to think a lot of themselves, but their self-esteem is totally dependent on manipulating other people to give them the admiration they need. And they need this desperately to a point where if they're not getting it, they could go into a rage or they could go into putting you down or somehow manipulating you into knowing that you can't do that anymore. You cannot make them feel bad about themselves. They can't tolerate it. That's actually about a lack of ego development. It's almost like a total lack of any sense of self. My sense of self is completely dependent on how I present to the world, how other people, how they elevate me, what they think of me. There's no true healthy self-regard in narcissism. Now, I will say that all of us are somewhat narcissistic at times. We all have narcissistic elements to our personalities, right? There's a little bit of narcissism. That's what I would call more normal narcissism. And I do talk about that in my video, Normal Narcissism versus Narcissistic Personality Disorder. So if you haven't seen that, do take a look, because we do have narcissistic elements, right? Children have a lot of narcissism. And Kohut's theory was that if they got what they needed when they were children, then when they were adults, they would have healthy self-regard. And I agree with that, right? So when we don't get that as kids, and most of us don't really get it in full anyway, we grow up with a lot of insecurities. And then those insecurities are our Achilles heel, so to speak, to bring in another myth. But that's where we're sensitive. And the people who aren't sensitive in that way do have incredibly good self-esteem in a healthy, empathetic way. Okay, I want to share with you some of the points from an article from Entrepreneur Magazine. But before I do that, I do want to say that if you're in a relationship with somebody who has pathological narcissism, like narcissistic personality disorder, that is a very difficult place to be. A narcissist will not respect your boundaries. A narcissist does make it all about them. A narcissist will put you down for what needs you might have. There is no way you can argue your way out of this situation. Truly, there's not. There's no way to convince the narcissist of their bad behavior, really. I know it's not something people really want to hear. Now, that doesn't mean you have to end every relationship, although many people do choose to do so if they can. But there are ways to put in place boundaries for yourself to protect yourself, your own self-esteem, your own self-regard, your physical safety, your emotional safety. So there are ways to put boundaries in place. And I do have a program on boundaries, particularly for people who grew up in families that were enmeshed or parentified, or who fall into sort of the empath category or the people pleaser category. So this boundary course is designed for you. And unfortunately, those categories I read, those are people who often end up in relationships with somebody with a personality disorder. So check the course out. I'll put the link in the description to the video. I'll also post it here on the screen. I invite you to figure this out really from the inside out, right? This is for you, for your work internally, to figure out how to put these boundaries in place. All right, let's come back to the article I want to mention to you. So Entrepreneur Magazine ran an article, you can Google it, 8 traits of healthy narcissism that drive success. All right, I'm just going to briefly read you the 8 traits. They're self-aware, they're collaborative, they earn approval, meaning they work for it, right? They're flexible, firm, respectful, and a team player. All right, these 8 traits, these are great traits, and I definitely believe they are tied to success. And we should all develop them. And those reflect somebody who's emotionally intelligent, probably has decent self-esteem, self-confidence, has worked on themselves, takes responsibility. There's nothing narcissistic in that list, okay? Now, this may be a matter of semantics, but I think it's super important for us to be careful about how we're throwing these terms around. Another popular YouTuber says that healthy narcissism develops when you as a child were free to be yourself, free to express your own opinions, free to express vulnerable emotions without shame, and you grow up to love yourself, to have good, healthy self-respect, right? And again, I think that's all awesome. And I agree, when children can be raised and allowed to express their vulnerability. It's very important. We all have vulnerability, and that allows us to be in touch with that and with our real emotions. And that develops that emotional intelligence that's reflected in that entrepreneur list. And self-love doesn't mean self-love like I'm going to stare at myself in the mirror for hours and hours on end and be rude to everybody else in my life and turn down everybody else who wants to be in my life. No, self-love just simply means like, yeah, I like myself and I can take care of myself. And I can also love my family and I can help take care of them. And there's balance in my relationships, right? So we're just very concerned about this concept of self-love. And I think we always like question like, oh, does it mean I'm selfish? Am I too self-involved? But even those questions, right? Those questions are moving to be a little too self-involved. But narcissism is a different thing. And yes, having a strong sense of self, having authentic confidence, I can be me, I can truly be who I am, is a wonderful, beautiful place to be where you can feel joy and love and freedom. And I believe you can get there. If you're watching this video, you can get there. And I hope my videos are helpful. And I do have a bunch of free resources and tools in the links underneath this video. So check those out and let me know what you think about this. Let me know what you think of the term healthy narcissism. All right. Talk to you later.